Chapter 3. The Creed and the Shadows. The ringing clash of Beskar against Beskar echoed through the covert's training hall. Dax, barely taller than the hilt of his instructor's vibroblade, staggered backward, his training saber falling from his grip. He hit the floor hard, the air rushing from his lungs as the towering figure of Tor Valen loomed over him. "Get up," Tor commanded, his voice as unyielding as the iron halls around them. "You think the galaxy will show you mercy? You think the Jedi or the Sith will give you a moment to breathe? You're Mandalorian, Dax. You fight until you cannot, and then you fight some more." Dax scrambled to his feet, the sting of failure burning hotter than the ache in his ribs. The covert was watching. Dozens of other foundlings, armored warriors, and elders stood in a silent semicircle, their visors reflecting his humiliation. He picked up his training saber, gripping it tightly despite the trembling in his hands. Again, Tor came at him, a whirlwind of precision strikes. Dax dodged and parried as best he could, his smaller frame and quicker reflexes giving him an edge. But Tor's experience outweighed Dax's youthful energy. A sharp kick to the chest sent Dax sprawling once more. "Enough," Tor said, deactivating his blade. His helmet tilted down, the T-shaped visor locking onto the boy. "You have potential, but your heart is soft. Strength without will is nothing. Remember that." These lessons were the foundation of Dax's youth. The covert was his world, a hidden bastion of Mandalorian culture, bound by the creed and the harsh realities of survival. Strength, loyalty, and self-reliance were virtues drilled into every foundling from the moment they could hold a blade. But for Dax, these teachings were both a comfort and a burden. While the other children bonded over shared victories and rituals, Dax often found himself alone. His Force sensitivity set him apart, manifesting in small, unintentional ways, sensing an opponent's strike before it came, moving faster than seemed natural, or anticipating the fall of a collapsing wall during a mission. What should have been an asset became a source of fear and mistrust. The Mandalorians of Dax's covert revered the creed above all else. They believed in unity, in the power of the collective to overcome any challenge. Yet the Force was an anomaly, an individual power that could not be shared, only wielded. To the elders, Dax's abilities were a threat to their way of life. "You must suppress it," Tor told him one night, the two of them standing beneath the glittering canopy of a frozen Norak sky. "The Force has no place among our kind. It will corrupt you, as it has corrupted so many others." "But it's part of me," Dax protested, his voice tinged with frustration. "How can I ignore what I feel?" "By remembering who you are," Tor snapped. "You are Mandalorian. That is your identity, your strength. Not this curse." Despite Tor's warnings, Dax couldn't abandon his connection to the Force. He began to train in secret, experimenting with his abilities when no one was watching. He learned to enhance his reflexes, to sense danger before it struck, and even to manipulate small objects with his mind. These skills made him a formidable warrior, but they also deepened the rift between him and his clan. Mandalorian culture had always been built on the principle of survival. Their traditions, Beskar forging, battle hymns, the rituals of donning and maintaining their armor, were rooted in centuries of struggle and resilience. Dax embraced these traditions, finding solace in the rhythm of hammering metal into shape or the solemn chants that echoed through the covert's halls. Yet, he could never fully belong. The Force was a part of him, and no amount of training or prayer could change that. By the time Dax reached adulthood, he had become a paradox, a Mandalorian who embodied their martial prowess and cultural pride, yet stood apart from them in spirit. His banishment was inevitable, a moment etched into his memory like a scar. On the day he left, the covert's elders gathered to deliver their judgment. Tor stood among them, his voice hard but laced with sorrow. "You have chosen your path, Dax Solus. It is not ours. You are no longer one of us." As he walked away from the covert, his armor heavy on his shoulders, Dax felt the weight of the creed, the only family he had ever known, fall away. Yet even in exile, he carried the teachings of his people with him, the honor of the forge, the discipline of the hunt, and the silent prayer whispered before battle. "This is the way," he murmured to himself, the words both a comfort and a curse. In the years that followed, Dax's training as a Mandalorian became the foundation upon which he built his mastery of the Force. He refined his combat skills, melding Mandalorian techniques with the deadly precision of a Force wielder. He forged his own path, but the shadows of his past lingered. A constant reminder of what he had lost. The icy wind of Norak Fiv whipped around Dax as he descended the steep mountain path leading away from the covert. His footsteps were heavy, his armor weighed down not just by Beskar, but by the crushing finality of his exile. He gripped his helmet tightly in his hand, its once pristine surface marred by scratches from years of battle and training. With each step, the voices of his clan faded, replaced by a suffocating silence. The galaxy beyond the covert was vast and unwelcoming. At first, Dax wandered aimlessly, taking on small mercenary jobs to survive. The skills he had honed in the covert served him well, but they also marked him as an outsider. Other Mandalorians he encountered recognized the subtle deviations in his armor, the lack of a clan sigil. They didn't ask questions, but their silence spoke volumes. To them, he was a Dika, a child of Mandalore no longer worthy of the creed. Yet, Dax's exile also brought freedom. For the first time, he could explore the abilities that had set him apart without fear of judgment. He began to experiment with the Force in earnest, pushing the boundaries of what he could accomplish. On the barren moon of Dradok, he trained relentlessly, honing his combat techniques and blending them with his newfound powers. At first, it was simple things: enhancing his speed, anticipating attacks, lifting small objects. But as his connection to the Force deepened, he uncovered darker abilities, ones he could scarcely control. On one fateful day, during a skirmish with a group of bounty hunters who had cornered him in a decrepit outpost, his anger unleashed a torrent of energy. The shockwave obliterated his attackers and the structure around them, leaving Dax standing amidst the wreckage, his breathing ragged and his heart pounding. The incident haunted him. The Mandalorian creed had taught him discipline and restraint, but the Force had awakened something wild and primal within him. He feared the power, but he couldn't deny the allure of it. In the Force, he found something the creed had never given him, a sense of identity that was entirely his own. The holocron of Lurak Fi. It was on Lurak Fi, in the ruins of a forgotten Jedi outpost, that Dax's path took a darker turn. The outpost had been abandoned for centuries, its crumbling walls overgrown with vines and moss. Dax had come seeking shelter, pursued by a group of Imperial remnants determined to claim the bounty on his head. But what he found beneath the ruins was far more valuable. The holocron was hidden within a secret chamber, its faint red glow illuminating the darkness. When Dax touched it, a surge of energy coursed through him, and the chamber seemed to hum with life. The holocron activated, projecting the image of a hooded figure cloaked in shadow. Its voice was deep and resonant, filled with both menace and wisdom. "You are not Jedi," the voice said, its tone neutral yet probing. "And yet, you are not Sith. What are you, warrior?" Dax hesitated, his hand hovering over the holocron. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was a Mandalorian, but that life is gone. Now, I'm just surviving." "Survival is a path," the holocron replied. "But it is not enough. You seek power, power to forge your own destiny. I can show you the way." Dax was no fool. He had heard the stories of the Sith, of their manipulation and treachery. But the holocron's words resonated with him in a way the creed never had. For the first time, someone, or something, saw his potential as more than a curse. Over the following months, Dax studied the holocron in secret. Its teachings were unlike anything he had encountered. It spoke of the Force not as a binary struggle between light and dark, but as a tool to be wielded, a weapon forged by will and shaped by purpose. The lessons were harsh, demanding sacrifices of body and mind, but Dax embraced them with the same discipline he had learned as a foundling. One of the holocron's most profound teachings was the creation of a lightsaber. The Sith within the holocron guided Dax through the process, pushing him to channel his anger and pain into the weapon. Using scraps of metal salvaged from the ruins, Dax constructed the hilt, a simple but deadly design, reflecting his Mandalorian roots. For the crystal, he returned to the outpost where he had obliterated the bounty hunters, finding a fractured red kyber crystal among the ruins. The process of attuning the crystal was excruciating. The holocron demanded that Dax pour his emotions into the stone, bending it to his will. Every failure brought searing pain, the crystal rejecting him until he could fully embrace the darkness within himself. When the process was complete, the crystal emitted a blade of dark crimson, its edges flickering like fire. The lightsaber became an extension of Dax, a symbol of his dual identity. It was a Mandalorian weapon, wielded with precision and purpose, but infused with the raw, unrelenting power of the Force. With it, Dax was no longer just an exile. He was a force to be reckoned with, a warrior forged in shadow. Dax's training and culture had shaped him into something unique, a Mandalorian by blood and tradition, but a Force wielder by destiny. As he wandered the galaxy, his name became both a warning and a legend, whispered among mercenaries, Jedi, and Sith alike.